Hello there to my fellow Force users. Welcome to Star Wars Chit-Chat, the show where I take you on a journey through all things Star Wars with a variety of different guests. But why me? Well, I'm just a massive Star Wars fan. I've read all the comics, lots of the novels, lots of Legend stuff and the games, spoke to loads of content creators as well, and also Star Wars authors. But most importantly, I'm incredibly passionate about Star Wars. And this episode, we're at the finale of Clone Wars Conversations. This has been an episode for about a year and a half in the making. So we have gone through all of the Clone Wars. I've seen it all now 3 times. Dave has seen it all now twice. But Maff, this was Maff's first time. He'd never seen the finale before. We started from square zero and we went all the way over the year and a half. Slowly, he's had to wait when finishing episodes before starting the next one before he could record. So he had to record an episode before continuing on. So we've been staggering them. We've been taking our time to really absorb it. But we are finally here. We're at the finish line. This is not going to be the last episode. We will do a big wrap-up episode. But this is purely going to be focusing on the final episodes. So, my friends, we're here. The Siege of Mandalore, Order 66, Ahsoka Rex, Maul, lots of things, including a great end scene, which anyone watching on YouTube will be able to see. Maff in the background has already put 2 of them together, which looks very incredible. Lots of visual things in this episode. There's loads to talk about. So let's kick it off. Let's straight away dive in. Before we delve into the specific details of the episodes, let's do what we always do in these episodes, which is ask my lovely co-hosts how they felt about this as a whole without getting into too much depth. And as per the usual fashion, we'll start with Dave, because he has already seen this before. So, Dave, on the rewatch, first of all, was this your first rewatch since you originally saw it? How much did you remember? And then just general vibes, and then we'll go to Maff.
So yeah, I've watched this the once. As usual, remember very little, but remember those highlights. I would say definitely the crossover with Revenge of the Sith, and that whole shocking sort of feeling, and also, after we did the last 4 episodes, I was sort of thinking, well, these have got to absolutely kick ass, because those last 4 were rubbish. So I know I finished the series just like, wow. And I'm sure I must have texted you at the time, multiple times through watching, but definitely at the end here saying, yes, watching Clone Wars makes the prequels better. So yeah, and there was some of the details. I must admit, I've watched it twice even to come into here, because I kind of get a bit lost in it, in terms of where the different things happen. And you've obviously got the Mandalore stuff, but then really for me, it's all about the post Order 66 stuff. It's like a movie, isn't it? And so each of the 4 episodes is great, but it does kind of flow a bit like a movie. And you definitely have that conflict, so more, I would say the last 2 episodes were just absolute top of the top tier.
Yeah, and as I said to Maff before going into this, I said these 4 episodes are the 4 highest rated episodes of not only Star Wars, but almost any TV in existence. They're all gotten over 9.5. The last 2 have both got 9.8 and 9.9 out of 10 on IMDb, which is insane. That's like unheard of, especially for modern Star Wars as well. And just as a reminder to lovely listeners and watchers, the episodes are, because I should have said it before asking Dave, Old Friends But Not Forgotten is episode 9, Phantom Apprentice is episode 10, Shattered is episode 11, and then the finale is Victory and Death. So Maff, this was your first time. You've now finished. You can say you've finished the Clone Wars. There's no more spoilers. There's a few Bad Batch and Tales of stuff, but generally, now you've seen all of Rebels and all of Clone Wars, you've finished. So how does that feel for you, good sir?
I feel like one of these episodes after watching this, I feel shattered, because I've got to say that the previous 4 episodes, I was like, anything's going to be better. And going into this, not knowing what I was going to witness. I mean, I paused it and I took a picture, and I was watching it Saturday night and sent it to you, and it's like, I had to stop, because I realised what was happening. I'm like, I'm not ready for this. I just did not expect to. I mean, Dave says perfectly that watching this makes the prequel so much better, and it's weird because Order 66, what kind of went on, but you don't see lots of it. really. You see like little snippets here and there from what I can remember. But seeing this and being with Ahsoka when it happens and that, it's like, and I mean, we'll get into that episode as we go along, but it was just like, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I mean, I think you said in the last episode that, every like 5 minutes something happens, and it started off and it was just like, and we're going. And it would just, forget the map, and this was just a sprint all the way through. And I mean, I watched all 4 in a row because I think Dave did the same thing. It's like he started it and I just couldn't stop. And it's like, sometimes you'll get to that 4th episode and I'll be a bit lagging and I was like, okay, right, ready. As if I'd just had like 10 copies. I mean, I've gone back and rewatched stuff and I've pulled out little bits that I'd missed previously. There's a character in this who I think I said to you in Discord who I didn't notice first time. And
I didn't want to spoil it. I didn't want to reveal to you guys anything that was going on in these episodes. But a good spot, yeah. I was aware of them, but
it's because the weird thing was he was stood with someone else. I thought, why is there a kid there? That didn't make sense.
Mm.
And then I looked and researched to see who it was, and it's like, right.
And who's to say that in a future bit of content,
well,
maybe we'll revisit. Maybe we'll see them again.
He's been in it before. He was in right near the start of the Clone Wars, because when Ahsoka's training, he sat in the background with what's she called, Depa Billaba. He sat with her and he's kind of watching Ahsoka. So you see, things like that, sometimes it then makes you kind of work out where things are, because then, Caleb's about probably just a little bit younger than what Ahsoka is.
Yeah, I think he's about 10 at this point-ish. He's not that old. He's quite a bit younger. And we'll see, because there's more animated stuff to watch, and there's more little. There's still a few surprises. I haven't revealed everything, but the big boys, the big guns with this finale. With the general consensus from you two is it was worth it, and it is.
It was all right, yeah. I mean, I don't want to go into too much, but I can see why they're top tier. I can see why. I mean, these 4 could be released as a film, and I think people 100%. Would be happy to watch this, because it is some of the best Star Wars stuff. And as I say, it's just night and day from the previous 4 episodes.
It makes you question it even more. Of like, the Bad Batch weren't the best, but they were pretty good episodes, very mature in a lot of respects. And then you get the middle 4, you're like, what is this? And then you get this, and you're like, it makes the decision even more peculiar.
I preferred not to have had the middle 4.
I would have rather there were 2 episodes, as Dave kind of said. I wish there were 2 episodes, then we got 1 or 2 episodes about some other random things, and then get back in. But alas, but they landed. I'm glad you enjoyed the math. I knew you would, because I think it's, as a Star Wars fan, I think it's basically impossible for anyone to not enjoy this. And the IMDb ratings clearly reflect that. If you watch these 4 and you said, yeah, I don't like these, I'd be like, what are you watching
Star Wars?
Well, not only are you watching Star Wars for, what are you watching anything for? Like, what could you possibly want more out of this? This has got everything. It's got lightsaber battles. It's got Order 66. It has incredible emotional beats. It has little cameos that don't take away from the plot. It has connections to the original trilogy. It has connections to, obviously, Revenge of the Sith, hugely. But it stands alone without referencing it in a really overt way that ruins stuff. It's just so much.
The thing is, it also has them points where you're questioning why the Jedi are doing what they're doing. And they do kind of explain to a certain degree, but you still kind of, I'll wait till we get into it.
Good stuff. So we'll get into the first episode. So I'll do a brief overview. So this is Old Friends Not Forgotten. So it starts with that big battle, and the animation is phenomenal. I know it's the same animation style as the last couple of arcs, but this specifically, I was like, wow, all the stops have been pulled out. The action feels incredible. You've got what I describe as Anakin Prime, which is when Anakin was at the absolute height of his power, because after he got, amputated in Mustafar, he lost a lot of it, and then Vader spent a lot of his time getting some of that power back. But the whole thing was, Vader was never in the suit. Vader, his potential was peaked. He couldn't become any better. And that was why Palpatine kept him at his side the whole time, because he was like, if he'd never gotten the suit, he would have easily overthrown Palpatine and stuff. But we've got Cody and Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan gets a really cool starting bit, but then obviously Anakin comes in and just absolutely destroys everything. And then you get Ahsoka coming in. She uses Fulcrum to communicate with them, which is quite a cool little reference. And they thought it was Saul Guerrera. Ahsoka greets R2-D2. Then you've got Bo-Katan coming into it. You've got war concerns, but then there's the whole debate of whether or not the Jedi should go and stop Maul from taking over Mandalore, or if they should go help Palpatine, which obviously is the start of Revenge of the Sith. So unfortunately, we already knew what was going to happen. But then you've got the 501st, who salute, and they've got Ahsoka's art on the helmets, which I know, Maff, you I think saw that briefly as a spoiler ages ago, which you did mention. There's a little bit of back and forth. Obi-Wan does seem to be a bit of a stickler for the rules in a lot of these episodes. Ahsoka gets her lightsabers back. You got Gar Saxon, and then the Siege of Mandalore begins. That's really the majority of what happens in these kind of episodes. So I will come to you first, Maff, actually, instead of Dave this time. I'll go to Dave next. But for this episode in particular, we'll try and I've just covered everything loosely, but when we focus on what's the one bit of everything I just waffled on about that you want to talk about that really stood out to you?
You know, the bit with Anakin, and when he kind of turns up and Obi-Wan's kind of cowering down, and he's like, it's funny because it reminds me of, do you remember this probably? There's a bit in one of the Lethal Weapons when there's the sniper in the school, and Mel Gibson's character Riggs kind of walks up and he's shooting him. He's like, get down, and he's just walking up nicely, and then he kind of just takes him out with the amp pistol gun.
Sounds like it might be 3 or something, but
yeah, it could have been. Mel Gibson looked a little bit older and that, but Anakin was so sure of himself and that, and it's kind of like, you know, well, I can have a cow here with you, or I can, you know, we could just win this. And it's funny because it's kind of a role reversal there. Instead of Obi-Wan being the one leading, it's like Anakin just kind of, as if say, overall, man, I've got this. So I kind of like that, but when it gets to the point where Ahsoka's like, we can get Maul, to me it's like there shouldn't have been a question there. They shouldn't, let's go get him. I get that with a bit of writing, there's a reason why they can't just go up and do that. They went back to the Jedis and they told them what was the plan, didn't they? And then
no,
didn't they ask if the council whether they could go and get Maul? And they're like, no, Grievous is attacking.
It was more so that Ahsoka spoke to them and said, it was Ahsoka and Bo-Katan said, look, this is what's happening. And Obi-Wan and Anakin were like, okay, well, let's figure this out. Then a load of alarms set, and they were like, oh my god, Coruscant's being attacked by Grievous. Then they communicated with the Jedi at that time,
right?
While after finding out, and they were like, no, you need to go help Palpatine. You know, they said we've lost contact with Shark T, and Grievous has attacked, and she was protecting Palpatine. That's Shark T's death scene that we saw in Yoda's vision in season 6 of the Clone Wars, and then, you know, moving Palpatine to the Invisible Hand, Grievous's ship, to try and leave Coruscant, where Dooku was there. That was, you know, again, when you rewatch Revenge of the Sith, you'll see that a bit more, because it reminds you a lot. You'll probably want to watch that and then go back to this. But it was, they found out about the plot, as in Obi-Wan Anakin, then immediately, like within seconds after finding out, the Jedi Council and everyone went, someone's attacking the Republic space, they're attacking Coruscant, you have to go back there. And Obi-Wan, he's a Jedi Master on the Council, so he literally has authority to say yes or no. And he did have that clash with Bo-Katan, saying, we can't. We need to go save Palpatine. Maul is, he's a problem, but I've been told by the Council and everyone else to stop pursuing Maul, because it's an emotional thing. He's on Mandalore, which is not a useful world. It's a neutral world. Palpatine and Coruscant are being attacked. If we lose this battle, we'll lose the whole war. This is like the last gambit. And so Obi-Wan makes the decision. He says, I can ask, the last thing he kind of says to Bo-Katan and stuff is like, I can ask the Council, but I know what they're going to say. And then we never really see him ask. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I wondered whether it were a case of Palpatine had got wind that they were after Maul.
Oh, certainly. I'm adamant that's almost certainly what happened.
Grievous to go and attack Coruscant then now, and plans in motion.
Yeah, I think it was the end game. I think that was it. Well, if I pause you there and come to Dave, what did you think of what Maff just said? And then we'll get one of your best moments.
So I'm trying to replay it at the moment, because I think what I'd say about all 4 episodes is I kind of forgot that there was even a Maul and Mandalore thing in this because my memory just goes to post Order 66. So that's really from, episode 10, sorry, episode 11, really. And before that, I'm trying to think the mental gymnastics to kind of get there. I mean, we've spoken about the writing. It's been a bit lumpy in this whole series, but it's really clever the way they've knit everything together with the Revenge of the Sith and made it so it doesn't really contradict. I'm sure there's probably, if you troll Reddit, maybe you'd find some things that don't quite stack up, but I think it kind of makes sense. But I'm trying to think, did Palpatine really sort of set this all up as well? I mean, he is playing 20-dimensional chess, isn't he? Not just 4D chess. So yeah, the one thing I just wanted to say before I forget it as well, you mentioned about the animation at the start. It was the same as before. I felt like this took another jump again.
Well, that's what
I felt like
yeah.
this. Yeah, it just felt more cinematic, and it felt like you should be watching this on the big screen. Even more so, I know it's the same season, they were all sort of made in the same time, but I feel like they spent a little bit extra money on this bit.
I think because the lightsaber fights is motion capture.
It is, yes.
And
Ray Parks comes back as Maul in motion capture.
And you can feel that. Because as opposed to the previous when you've seen them fighting, the thing is, it's actually two real people. I know they can jump and make them jump further and what have you, but because you're actually seeing the movement of actual people, it feels more real. Now, I don't know how much is motion captured, whether it's just the fighting part or whether they do a bit more.
It's pretty much all the stuff with Maul and Ahsoka in the throne room in Mandalore. That's all motion capture. So when you've got Ray, you can see behind the scenes Ray Parks holding a long staff, dueling with the person who does the motion capture for Ahsoka in that. And I agree with you. I think it feels more grounded because I like the Clone Wars. There's lots of cool lightsaber battles in Clone Wars. There's a few in Rebels. But really, when I think top 5 lightsaber battles, nothing from the animation really comes into it apart from the Ahsoka Vader thing. But that's because of the emotional side, not necessarily because of the action side. Because with animation, there's so many lightsaber battles with Dooku in these series, but I think it feels quite floaty. And that's just because of the animation style. It just feels like when people are hitting, it feels like two sprites kind of doing this. But in that Mandalore one, it did feel like feet on the ground and all the movements were weighted. You know what I mean?
It's like they took Duel of Fates, which it's good because of what happens, but it's very stop-start, 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 then a death, and then a bit stop-start, and then the kind of Maul gets cut in half. This, it just flows, and it's as if they've kind of said, that worked, and that was emotional for a reason, but what we're going to do is take that out and move that fighting and give it more of a purpose here as well, and it works just so well. It just feels like watching ballet.
I was going to say, because Maff's mentioned about Duel of the Fates there, again, I feel like the music, most of the time in the series, it's kind of this familiar, but not quite the movie's music. Whereas here, in these 4 episodes, they seem to lean into the classic movie music a lot more.
Yeah, Kevin Kilner does the music for this, and especially, and we'll get there at the end, but the last music you hear in the part that you can see in the background of Maff's thing is called, I think it's Burying the Dead. And whenever I hear it, it's harrowing. It's so emotional, just a quiet piano with a lot of reverb on it or resonance. It's incredible. But I do want to look back before we get into, I know there's loads to talk about in these, but just back to you, Dave. In that first episode, was there anything that stood out between, there was the starting battle, the Bo-Katan and Kenobi clashing over political things, the Ahsoka paint on the helmets, or the lightsabers being given by Anakin? Any of those kind of things stood out in this episode in particular for you?
Not particularly. I did like the Ahsoka helmet bit. I'd forgotten about that bit. No, I think for me, it's just your classic opening scene of an arc or opening chapter, if you like. So I thought it, like I say, it looked cinematic. It sounded great. But again, I'm kind of willing this one past because I know what's coming after.
Yeah. It is. There's a lot. And I will say just a quick thing, and I'll come to you, Matt, for any final words on this first episode, then we'll get into Phantom Apprentice, because I know the Order 66 stuff is phenomenal. Phantom Apprentice has my favourite dialogue exchange, arguably in all of Star Wars ever, outside of the Rebels finale. But one thing, I don't know if you two noticed, when Ahsoka gets her lightsabers back from Anakin, the lightsabers are not green anymore. They're blue. And he says, they're exactly the same, maybe a little better. And so it's canonically showing that you can change your lightsaber color and someone else can actually change your lightsaber color as well. And now in Fallen Order and Survivor, the two Jedi games are amazing. Obviously, Cal can change his lightsaber color in those, but that's for us. In canon, he doesn't. He just has a blue. He has a blue lightsaber. That's just what he keeps. So it was quite nice to see, to kind of hand-wavy and explain, like, you can change your lightsaber color, really. Someone can kind of change it. Now, whether or not that's, you get it and you imbue it with your essence, and that has a color, and that's just it, and anything that Anakin touches becomes that color, or if he specifically wanted to change it, or whatever, don't know. It does open up, the problem is with these, is that there are a few contradictions for the canon, but the main contradictions, like behind me is the Ahsoka novel, here, which this was made, which is why I said to Maff, do not read this book. It has flashbacks to the Siege of Mandalore, but that was before the Siege of Mandalore episodes got made. And in that, Ahsoka's lightsabers are noted as being green. Like that kind of continuity error I don't give a crap about. But there's tiny little things like in there, like the main battle happens, I think, in a slightly different place. There's little tiny bits of information that are slightly different, just because of things that they had to do. There's one other bit of content I can't remember at the moment, which does vaguely, like a little bit is tweaked, but actually canon-wise, they kept quite a bit in that. So, Maff, is there anything in these that you want to mention before we get into Phantom Apprentice?
Yeah, there's a couple of things.
Do it.
Hang on. There's a couple of characters in there that at first I didn't notice who there was. Gas Saxon, we've said, who was voiced by Ray Stevenson's.
Yeah, who played Baylan Skoll in Ahsoka, because I pointed him out in Son of Dathomir, didn't I?
Yeah. Is it Usaren?
What, as an actor name or
no,
character?
the character she stood with Bo-Katan.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I believe you're right. I didn't look up that character in particular, but yes.
Who's the mother of
Sabine?
Sabine, yeah. There is also, because it's nice that they're linked to Rebels in this, we've already said there's Caleb in it, who turns into...
Caleb Dume, my boy.
Yeah, turns into Kanan. So it was nice to kind of see little bits there. And as I say, watching this, I then have to kind of do a little bit of research, trying to be careful what I do look at and that. But because I finished Clone Wars, I kind of think that
you're now free.
Yeah, aside from a little bit of Bad Batch stuff, you're basically free. There are Clone Wars connections in Bad Batch, but I feel like if you're just vaguely careful, but if you can now look up stuff. Like, you've seen Rebels. Bad Batch, there's a couple little surprises, but if you found out about them before you watch Bad Batch, which obviously is not going to be probably for another year, I imagine, then it's not a big deal.
But there's Rook, who's the other Mandalorian. Is that what they're going on?
The out-of-universe name, I think, is Mandalorian, yeah.
Her and Gas Saxon went and rescued Maul from the prison. So, again, I feel that because Dave Filoni was pretty much the person who wrote this.
Pretty much, yeah. He was involved. I think the writer actually for these four is someone slightly different, but he had a very big hand in putting all the pieces together for these ones, because obviously Ahsoka's his baby. So
yeah, I guess I feel it's like someone's gone, right, okay, we've got Revenge of the Sith, we've got all this. There's gaps. And I need to fill them gaps, but I need to make it work. And it feels like he's sat down with certain people, whether it being Sam Witter, Whitner, and whether he's got a few people like that and going, okay, how do we make this work so that it's a compelling story that people are going to go, thank you, you've filled in them blanks that I didn't have.
And a redemption from the movie as well, because the Clone Wars movie compared to this, you just think, I know it's, over a decade difference, but
it just feels like it's like you said, a lot of them questions that you was going to ask would have been answered by the end. And it's like he's gone, right, okay, then we need to fill this blank and we need to fill this in and we need to kind of expand on this and give a little bit more. And what he's put on screen for us is just... the other thing I would say I'm annoyed at is the fact I didn't watch it sooner.
But you got the appreciation because it's been such a build-up and you've taken so much time to really process and get through all of the Clone Wars that you've actually... Because I've had to... I mean, I knew it was coming, granted, but I had to wait. So did Dave. And I know you're both chomping at the bit to watch Revenge of the Sith as well. So I just want to clarify the writers. So Filoni wrote all 4 of these. I'm just double checking, but someone else directed. They co-directed. So Filoni and a different director. There was Saul Ruiz, Nathaniel Villanueva. So Filoni co-directed these episodes, but he wrote all of them. So this is literally the ultimate redemption for Dave Filoni, because he wrote the Clone Wars movie, which is one of the worst pieces of Star Wars content. And then he made this, which I would say is one of the best pieces of Star Wars content. So it's pretty nuts. But we have got a lot of ground to cover. So I'm conscious that I want to move on to the next bit. Is there anything as a footnote you want to mention, Maff, before I move on to Phantom Apprentice?
There is the thing at the end where Maul was kind of hoping it was going to be Kenobi and Anakin instead of...
We'll get into that in fact, because that leads on to my favourite bit, which is the main thing I want to talk about.
Which I didn't realise he didn't know Ahsoka. Did he?
But this is the thing. When we spoke last, when we spoke last episode, and you were like, "Doesn't everyone know who Ahsoka is?" I was like, "No, no one has a clue she is. No one."
I didn't realise that.
No,
and it's like it was just like, who are you? Why were they sent you?
And then he goes and mind incepts all the clones and tortures and kills them all to find out more about Ahsoka, which just shows how clever he is. But we'll get into it. So, Phantom Apprentice. So I want to talk about Maul and Ahsoka, the discussion there. That's what I want to talk about specifically, but I'll quickly brief through it. So you've got the big thing for me is the prediction and the vision, which is Maul knowing what's going on. And this whole episode is he fights Ahsoka a little bit at the start and he's like, no, not yet. And he's like, you just can't see it. And he's trying to explain to her what's happening and she's not ready to accept it. And we obviously, because we know what happens in Rebels, she doesn't really accept it until Rebels, which is about 15 years after this. So you've got that. You then find out that Dooku is dead and Anakin's been told to spy on Palpatine. So obviously we're now right in the Phantom Menace. And when that happens and, Obi-Wan talks to Ahsoka and she immediately goes, well, Anakin's not going to be happy about that. And I literally written in bold here, the Jedi Order literally just handed Anakin to Palpatine. Literally, I knew it in Revenge of the Sith, but watching it here, even Obi-Wan's going, this isn't a good idea, and Ahsoka going, this is a terrible idea. Literally going, Palpatine might be the most masterful manipulator we've ever seen. He might be the ultimate Sith Lord. Let's put our most vulnerable and volatile person, who clearly has an issue with the dark side, let's put him to spy on the one person who could probably turn him. So that was a funny thing. And then, Maul tortures a lot of the clones. Jesse survives, obviously. Almec is then killed, which is, again, wrapping up certain loose threads. Maul then tells the syndicates to go into hiding, and you see some of the syndicates there, the start of the Shadow Collective and Crimson Dawn. The Pikes are there. Black Sun is there. Dryden Voss is there, who's the main baddie played by Paul Bettany in Solo. So, and you guys have only seen Solo each once, but Paul Bettany, good old Vision from the MCU, the baddie he plays in Solo, he's in that. And he's only in it for like 1 or 2 seconds, and he doesn't show up in any other animated content so far. So it was fun just to see him in it. And then you've got, Bo-Katan basically and Ahsoka separate. And then you've got the big fight between Ahsoka and Maul in several different places. And especially the ending where he says, let me die, which I think is great when she saves him from falling. But the main thing I want to drill down here and ask you both about, and then I can see if there's anything else in this episode you guys want to talk about. We've already touched the motion capture stuff, so we don't necessarily need to talk about that. It does do the cutting away bit, which does Rex. I also want to do an addendum. In the last episode, I said there's no reference in any way, shape, or form to Son of Dathomir. There is. one very tiny reference to it, which is Maul saying thank you to Gar Saxon and I think the other Mandalorian, I don't know if it was Ursa or whom it was, but saying, Rook, there you go, saying, like, thanks for rescuing me. It was literally just like a passing line. Thanks for getting me from Palpatine or something. So he does barely reference it, but I want to mention that. But the main thing here is that Ahsoka would have also joined Maul. He says, come with me. And she says, I will. But you need to tell me what Skywalker, what does he mean to you? And when Maul reveals that he's figured it out, Palpatine's plan, he realizes that Anakin is the key to everything. He realizes that Anakin is the one who's going to destroy everything. He's the one that the whole plan all centers around. And Ahsoka just cannot deal with it. She can't accept it. And she goes to strike Maul. And then he says the Padawan must learn a lesson. And then they fight. And I'm like, that for me, the Order 66 stuff has got the emotional resonance, which we will get into. But for me, this is one of my favourite moments in all of Star Wars ever, because you've got Maul, who's one of my favourite villains. You've got Ahsoka, who's grown so much as a character throughout the whole season. And then, of a thing I never even considered going into this, when I first watched it, is that Maul has figured out the plan. And can you imagine the weight Ahsoka must feel, knowing she said no to him, and then years later, Maul was right? So I just want to say all that stuff because I thought it was incredible. So Dave, coming to you, did you remember, I know you basically remembered everything post Order 66. Did you remember this stuff? And what have you thought about all the Maul and Ahsoka stuff? Tell us in detail. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, at this point in the canon, she's obviously left the Jedi Order, but she still has those Jedi traits, doesn't she? That literally the baddie can tell you everything, tell you the truth, and they will just completely ignore it and just go about their business and carry on doing what they were doing before. Like you say, she was told pretty much straight away, and I hadn't thought, about the fact that she's ignored this until Rebels. But then it also, I kind of want to see more Ahsoka content now as well. I want to see, we saw her obviously in The Mandalorian, but I don't think we really saw the weight of this in that series. I just feel like they could really drill into that a lot more. But the action scene's so good, isn't it? It just, and you can tell, like you say, it's there's just a weight to it. There's a realism to it that isn't there before. And yeah, I hadn't really considered that, but amazing scenes. Just really, really good episode. And you're right, it's not all just about post Order 66, but coming up to this bit as well. And yeah, the Jedi sending Anakin right off to Palpatine. It just gets worse, doesn't it? Like, the more that we drill into these episodes and you think about what's going on there. I mean, everyone literally knows as well about Padme and everything. It's been so obvious. So yeah, silly, really.
It is. And it makes Revenge of the Sith hit that much harder. So Maff, your first time, tell us, like, what did you think about all this Maul and Ahsoka stuff and the weight of it all? How did you find it?
I love the fact that, I mean, every time Maul says Kenobi, that kind of rasp to it that he has, and that kind of venom that he has towards Kenobi, it really kind of brings him out. You think, oh, I just love the way he says that. But yeah, it's like, I know we're bad, I know we're against each other, but that Sidious is coming, and I have a way to stop him. So, this is a point of where you can kind of make the right decision and kind of save the galaxy. Nah, don't want to do that. Don't believe you. And it's like, oh, come on. It's frustrating. I get it, because she has Anakin on a pedestal and that.
And he saved it. Let's not forget, in the Jedi Temple bombing arc, he's the only reason she didn't get executed. No one else. Not Kenobi, not anyone. He's the one person who still stood by her, which makes it even harder.
Is why she's kind of like, he wouldn't do that. And the thing is, intentionally, no, he wouldn't do that. But the thing is, you've got someone who's such a manipulator. So, he's a groomer. He's groomed Anakin
100%.
into what he wants, and that he's played all the Jedi to be able to get this person who he knows he can manipulate, and that. But Ahsoka's like, yeah, but he's rash. He makes decisions that are questionable, but he always comes out on top. He wouldn't fall, and that. But we've watched it. We've watched this series, and we've seen him slowly getting darker and darker with certain things, and that. Knowing what's going to happen, and that you just think, oh come on, this was the point where you could have saved the galaxy. You could have saved Anakin. He would have never fallen if you could have just got in there and said to Jedi Council, look, if you're going to spy on him, that's fine, but don't send Anakin. Keep him well away.
Well, linking with that, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, Obi-Wan says you should speak to Anakin. And she says, I will do that. And then the thing happens and she has to go and she doesn't get the time to call him before the turn.
Is it this episode when Rex says, you didn't mention about what Maul said about Anakin?
Yes, I believe it's either this or the early next one. It's around that, but we'll include it.
Yeah, and she's like, yeah, I know. And it's like, yeah, but, that's kind of important information that may have made him think, hang on a minute, let's call Anakin. It'd have been too late, I think, because things had set in motion at that point.
Well, do you not think it's also, if you think of like working at a job you hate and everyone who's above you is a dickhead, and then like your colleague is, slacks off a little bit, but you're never going to rat them out because you're like, well, fuck these guys, fuck the Jedi Council. Jedi Council are going to let Ahsoka get executed for something she didn't do. And she was like, why would she rat him out,
And that's the thing, Ahsoka's, to a certain degree, she believes in Anakin, but she don't believe in the Jedi Order anymore. Especially this, can't believe I'm saying this, the previous 4 episodes, you kind of make it a little bit better by this because...
Redemption.
Because she's seen the fact that the Jedi are not pulling the weight. There are so many people who are suffering because the Jedi aren't doing what they should do. They think they're all high and mighty and they can do what they want and get away with things. And they're forgetting about the little people. So even more, she's a bit like, well, they're not going to listen anyway. They're going to do what they want to do because, Master, Funny Head and that. Keely Mundy. And, Yoda are like, they're so old, they probably don't really care too much nowadays. And that,
or they would just execute him. If they thought he was a threat. The way Mace is like, I wouldn't be surprised if Mace tried to kill Anakin because he's desperate. This is the thing. You see it happening in some of these conversations, especially in the next episode, which we'll get to.
But you see, if you're so good to have gone to Mace and said, look, there is a possibility that this could be happening, Mace would have been like, all right, fine, pull Anakin out. He would have done something about it, whereas the rest of the Jedi Order probably wouldn't have done. Council probably wouldn't have done that. But it's them little things like it could have been avoided, but you can see why Ahsoka didn't follow it through. And that, but the one thing I do like in this as well, when they kind of walk into the throne and like Maul's just sat there like on the throne, like
just waiting. He's got so much.
Join me. And it's like, the balls on that guy.
I love Maul. He's my favorite character who's a villain in Star Wars. Don't get me wrong, Palps is the best in air quotes. He's got all the plans. He has the ultimate power, but he bores me. He's just invincible unless he uses Force lightning, and that's the only time he can really ever be bested, apart from with Mace. But Maul he's so interesting. There's so much to him. And when you watch Rebels again, which I would recommend at some point, maybe after Revenge of the Sith or something, when you've watched that, just watch the finale, watch Twilight Over the Apprentice again, the finale of season 2 of Rebels. And that's to anyone listening to this who's been on this journey with us, because I know it's maybe a controversial decision to have gotten you, because I always tell people to watch Rebels before Clone Wars. It's mainly to get my hooks in you, because Clone Wars, as you've noticed, is so up and down. You might have fallen off the train a bit, but also because Ahsoka was coming out, I made the right call, because we wouldn't have even got to Rebels by the time Ahsoka came out. But I love Maul. I just think it's so incredible. And the funny thing is when Maul fights Ahsoka, he wins multiple times. He disarms her. She just about gets her lightsaber back. He disarms her again. Then when he runs and he escapes and stuff, he gets on the scaffolding-y bit at the top. He wins again. He disarms her completely. And the only reason she manages to get the upper hand on him is by essentially parrying him. He's too close quarters in that thing. He goes to grab it. She grabs the wrist, pulls the lightsaber off, and flips him over. And then he's just ready to fall, and he just doesn't save himself. He's just falling, and then she stops him, and he's like, "Let me die!" And it's like he's literally he didn't let her parry him then, but he would have survived the fall. He could have done something to get himself back. It's an
interesting one because she makes a point when they're fighting, and she's saying, she says something like, "It's a good job it's me and not Skywalker."
Oh yeah, Anakin
would have wiped the floor with you,
100%.
And that, but. The thing is, I don't think Maul's going to, like I say, he beats him, but I don't think he's going for a killing blow at any point.
Well, he saves Jesse, doesn't he? He doesn't kill Bo-Katan. He doesn't kill Jesse. He gives Jesse, but he's like, "Here you go," because he's got greater plans. But he wants to take up House.
He's got that thought of, we need to stop Palpatine, and that now he's probably also got in the back of that, I can then take over and
well, that's what she says, isn't it? She says, "I don't want you just killing Palpatine, then you just take his place," which is probably what Maul would have done.
It would have done, but if you think of it this way, Maul would have been easier to deal with than Palpatine.
He would have done a whole empire. It would have fallen apart under Maul. He's too brash.
Yeah.
But is there anything else, Dave? Is there anything you wanted to say about these episodes before we get into? I know you're desperate to talk about Post Order 66. Is there anything else you want to mention of what we've just been discussing?
I just think again is. Like I say, when I think back about how it starts off with Mandalore and Maul, and this had started, way back in the Clone Wars series. So to bring it all together, like I say, to bring them back seemed a bit odd to me at first. But the fact that you've got Ahsoka there, who's left the Jedi Order, so she's not a Jedi. You've got Maul, who's no longer a Sith, really. So you've got these two Ronins, essentially, who obviously see the world a bit differently, but they've probably got more in common than, a lot of other people. And so that back and forth, a lot of the dialogue and the fighting and stuff, I just thought it was really interesting. I had kind of forgotten about that a little bit, but it is a really interesting dynamic as well. And I agree with what you mentioned about going to watch the end of season 2 of Rebels as well. Just that, it's fast forwarding really, isn't it? All the way through the canon, but we've seen it before anyway. So it's fine to go back and watch that episode now. And just it hits you.
Maul and Ahsoka, the interactions there, you can tell in Rebels, there's some history there, but I don't know what it is. This is the history. Yeah. They both needed each other to survive this.
I think they would have made a really interesting partnership. You would have had that light and dark kind of balancing against each other. And I think if they'd have become a partnership and Ahsoka could have kept him, on
a leash almost.
On a leash, yeah, to a certain degree.
It's like Daredevil and Punisher. I've been recently watching Daredevil, but it makes me think where Daredevil and Punisher, the Daredevil and Punisher are meant to be good people in air quotes. It's just Punisher's more of an anti-hero. But especially in season 2 of Daredevil, they both want to take out the same people. They both want to do what the right thing is, but Punisher wants to put a full stop at the end of it, whereas Daredevil doesn't. And that's kind of how Maul and Ahsoka would be, I imagine. Maul would be like, right, we need to kill Anakin. We need to kill this Jedi. Look, we need to destroy these Jedi because they're the reason it happened. And she wouldn't go far enough, I think. I think that's kind of the comparison I would make there. But I would love more Maul and Ahsoka content. Unfortunately, we're not going to get it because I think Rebels is pretty clear that that's the first time they've seen each other in a long time. But I also like it that it means that, because when you first see Ahsoka and Maul together in Rebels, you go, well, Maul's a baddie. Even without watching Clone Wars, you go, but Maul's a baddie. Why is she not just immediately going for him? And when you see all this, because Filoni had, again, this was all written out, this is all planned, and Filoni at one of the Star Wars celebrations before Rebels came out, but after Clone Wars got cancelled, he basically told the crowd this whole plot. He explained it to them. And so it's like, when you see Ahsoka and Maul, without knowing it, they've got all this history, and that's why she doesn't just kill him immediately, because she's like, I don't know what your intentions are, because when we last spoke, yeah, you're not a good person, you're definitely an evil sadist, but what are you here for? Because you will probably not overtly just murder everyone here for the sake of it. You've got an angle, and that's one of the things I love so much. But I want to get into Shattered, because we do still get more on Ahsoka stuff. So if you want to delve back into that, we definitely can. But we've got the start of it is actually Bo-Katan talking about rebuilding Mandalore, which is quite nice. Nice in principle, but actually, obviously, what happens is what ends up happening in Rebels, which we see is the Empire just completely bulldozes and takes over. And then post-Rebels, they then bomb it all because of what we see in Mandalore. Well, I think it's in Book of Boba Fett, but whatever, in Mandalorian. But the thing I want to talk about in this one, there's the Order 66 stuff. I don't need to go through all of this, the plot here, because it's really just Order 66. But before we get there, and I'll give the first word about Order 66 to Dave. Before we get there, the council meeting that Ahsoka goes into and speaks. There's a joke in the Star Wars community about Citizen Tano. You won't know that, Citizen Tano, because it's like so talking down to her, you know, especially Mace being like, sorry, Citizen, we won't tell you. But that meeting, what's so interesting about it is when Ahsoka walks in and you've got Yoda and Mace talking about, I sense a plot to destroy the Jedi. That's in Revenge of the Sith. That exact scene with exact dialogue is in Revenge of the Sith. And what happens is when Yoda says something and he pauses, that's when it cuts in Revenge of the Sith. Then Ahsoka walks in. And so those two bits are so clearly connected that you basically get an extended version of that scene, which I love. And it really adds to like Mace and the Jedi, and we'll talk about this a bit in Revenge of the Sith. They still, at this point, didn't know it was Palpatine. They genuinely are just grasping at straws. That's the thing that makes so much in Revenge of the Sith, in my opinion, so brilliant. Because there's a lot of dialogue that Lucas chose, which is just like, what the fuck are you doing? But I think Revenge of the Sith, he balanced it so well. And the fact that Mace genuinely didn't know Palpatine was a Sith Lord, he goes off the words of Anakin, and he goes in there to the leader. That's like me, someone telling me, like this, or the Secret Service, someone telling an order of the Secret Service, the Prime Minister's actually like a Russian spy. And then me, as a MI5 person, going into Downing Street with a gun and telling the Prime Minister to resign right then and there. That's what happens in Revenge of the Sith. That's what Mace Windu does to Palpatine, which falls into Palpatine's plans even more, because then when he says the Jedi attacked me and disfigured me, if you watch the footage of that and you cut it before Palps pulls out his lightsaber, Mace draws his lightsaber first. So there's so much there that I love. But I want to pass the baton to Dave. You can speak about what I just spoke about as well, and then go into Order 66, because I want you to have, this is the bit that I know you are the most excited about. So I want to give the baton to you and tell us all about it.
Yes, so thank you. Yeah, again, we've been saying this for a long time, haven't we? But Mace is a dick. And definitely we've been alluding to it that in Revenge of the Sith, the change does happen too quickly. Mm-hmm. But we've seen this coming a mile off now. And not to the point where you understand and empathize with Palpatine, but you can kind of see it coming such a mile off. What I love about this Order 66, which seems like a horrendous thing to say, doesn't it? But we know what it is. But when you watch the movie, it just sort of happens, and the clones don't really have that much of a personality. They sort of appear at the end of Attack of the Clones, and then, you know, they're just there at the beginning of the movie. And when Order 66 happens, you've got no emotional connection to the clones. But we haven't just got an emotional connection to the clones. We've got an emotional connection to individual clones. It's not just any faceless beings that are turning on the Jedi now. We know them. We like them. We've seen them. They're brothers in arms, and that is the thing. And the way it's shot as well, where you can see Ahsoka and that realization, and you're getting the replay of the dialogue from Revenge of the Sith and stuff. You get Order 66, and she realizes Anakin and whatever, and yeah, I've got goosebumps now just thinking about it. It is so amazing. So I think that was the moment for me where, you know, I'd enjoyed the Clone Wars all the way through. But that was the moment where I remember now watching it the first time. I was like, holy fucking shitballs. This is amazing. So yeah, no deep analysis, just utter gushing praise. Loved it.
Math. I didn't. I gave you little teasers. I gave you, but I'm hoping, and you can confirm this. I didn't spoil anything in this episode, apart from Maul showing up, which actually the poster spoiled, to be honest, in Disney Plus. But did you have any? Did you know about this happening, and how did you feel when it happened? You kept asking questions. Oh, so you want to? Yeah, go ahead.
First, I think me and Dave have said this before. The way you've structured these podcasts with watch these episodes, watch these episodes, watch these episodes has worked most of the time really well. There's been a couple of where I wish I'd have been sick for them episodes, but it's worked really well, and it's kind of split it up in a nice, like little arcs that we've done. Now, before going into the Order 66, the bit with Mace, again, like Dave says, it's such a dick, because it's like, he senses darkness around Palpatine and that. So it's like, really, probably you should actually be watching Palpatine, not Anakin, who you don't trust already anyway.
Mm-hmm. And he says that numerous times, that he doesn't trust Anakin, even in the film.
So why send the person who you don't trust, who you think could be a problem, to go to the guy who you think could be a problem? Yeah, and that. But then again, he's a dick to Ahsoka, because when Yoda kind of asks about whether she is ready to be a Jedi and to come back, and she's like, no, she's a citizen. And then Mace goes, oh well, we can't discuss things like this around citizens. It's like, fuck off. she's just come and brought you some of the biggest information to warn you. Probably one of the people who you could trust, and that, and you're just like, go away, little girl. We don't need you. And it's like,
while we've got you on that meeting, did you like the Ahsoka Yoda thing? I forgot to mention that. I really liked that. I thought it was quite cute.
I felt, because you can feel that Yoda's kind of, Mace is like, he don't care, but you can feel Yoda's like trying to make up for the mistake that he realizes that they've made. And the fact that he's kind of happy, the fact that she's still, brothers in arms is not quite the right word, but she's still kind of coming back, and there's still an opening there for her. So I did. It was kind of a touching thing of, as if to say, look, we'll always be here for you.
Did you catch the last word he said? Did you catch what he called her right at the end? He called her Padawan.
Yes, he did. Yes,
because I heard it. I was like, and I rewound it and I checked again. He said, "May the Force be with you, Padawan." And I was like, that's him saying, for me, you're still part of the Jedi Order. You are still part of us. Even if you have left the Order, you are part of it for me. And I'm like, Yoda has his faults. He's a lot of shit he should have seen coming. But I think at his core, Yoda is a being of good and of light. And I just think that show of his connection with Ahsoka and how he treats her when he didn't have to, I think that really shows Yoda's true colours a lot more, which he doesn't want to be involved in these intergalactic politics. He just wants to train young Jedi. That's when he's most happy. When we saw him in Attack of the Clones, Again,
we'll just hold off that Order 66 for a little bit longer. The prison that they keep Maul in.
Yes.
Is that like they kind of mentioned something about, is it like a prototype to Carbonite?
I don't think, no, Carbonite's a weird one. Carbonite is in Bespin, in Cloud City, in Empire Strikes Back, essentially there's lots of different fuels and lots of different things people can use to fuel up ships. And one of the fuel types is mined in Bespin, and if you basically if you freeze it, it hardens. It's normally a gas. It's Tabana gas is the name of the gas. You freeze Tabana gas, you add moisture to it, it makes carbonite, which is what freezes people in stuff like Han Solo. People have been frozen in carbonite, and normally it's things get frozen in carbonite. Normally it's items that are perishable or things that need protecting. So carbonite freezing is actually something in Star Wars that had happened prior to Han Solo. The whole thing of testing him was humans are generally not putting carbonite as much, but obviously as we see in The Mandalorian, he's doing it. So it does happen, but I think in Bespin, the facilities they had weren't made for freezing living matter, and that's kind of what the whole is it going to work, we're not sure, we'll test it on him kind of thing. We'll test it on Han Solo, then we'll see if it works on Luke kind of thing, because it was the facilities more so. But carbonite's not indestructible. Carbonite it's very destructible, and there's actually some of the comics that I've mentioned that we will tackle at some point in the future, set between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. There's a whole plot line of Leia finding out more about carbonite to see how you would if you get someone out of carbonite, what the problems would be, how you get them out. Is there going to be long-term effects to them? Which is why she knows exactly what happened to Han in Jabba's palace when she takes him out. So that's a whole thing. That box thing that Maul's in, it refers to something that's only really in Legends yet, which I'm certain is going to be the next thing that Star Wars goes into the next era, is the Mandalorian Wars. So I believe what happened, the timeline, I can't remember what it is in Legends, but essentially between fighting the Sith, the Jedi were fighting the Mandalorians, and that's why Mandalorian armor in Clone Wars, is it really Beskar and invulnerable to loads of things like it is in the Mandalorian series? No, it's clearly not. I think we'll have to handwave that away and go, it wasn't thick enough. It was mass produced. The armor plating wasn't covering the body enough, so that all the wounds happened to kill people went in between the pieces of armor. That's how you have to handwave that away, because it makes no fucking sense. But the thing is that Mandalorians used to fight the Jedi. They tried to take over Coruscant at one point in Legends. At one point, certain Mandalorians actually teamed up with certain Sith that were like hidden away in the galaxy to try and beat the Jedi, because the Jedi keep beating them. So the Mandalorians basically created lots of armor, lots of technology, specifically designed to take on Force users, which is why Mandalorian fighters often use flamethrowers on their wrist, because you can't deflect a flamethrower with a lightsaber back at the person. Things like that. So it's just going, I think it was like 5,000 years prior or something, the Mandalorian Wars were fought between the Jedi and the Mandalorians, and that's kind of what's led. After that, there was like millennia of civil war, which eventually led to what happened with Satine, of going, I don't want to fight anymore. And that's around the time that all the stuff got outlawed prior to her, because Mandalorian Wars, Republic, etc. That's a very, very, very layman's brief overview of one of the biggest aspects of Legends that there is.
Yeah, it was interesting. Obviously, they had to transport Maul somehow, and having this kind of there. But there again, with the Mandalorians being kind of Jedi fighters, it makes sense. Another thing that I wrote down before as well, that Rex having mixed feelings about the war.
I've got that written down. I didn't mention that, please. Yeah.
And the fact that it's like, it's an interesting point that if there wasn't the war, the clones would never existed, and all these brothers that he's got. So he's kind of in that mixed feeling, which this may lead into Bad Batch, because obviously I don't know what's happening in Bad Batch, but like, what do they do when the war is over, when the clones are no more, being disbanded or whatever? I don't really know what happens with the clones afterwards, but at some point, we go from clones to stormtroopers, which is just anybody in there, even if you're pretty sharp for a stormtrooper. It was interesting that he kind of had that. He likes the fact that the war's there because he has life, but at the same point, at what cost is that? So we've been with Rex all the way through this.
He's been the clone perspective on that. I wanted to just ask Dave, did you have any thoughts on that before Maff unleashes his thoughts on Order 66?
No, it's a great point. I'd sort of forgotten about that bit as well. But I mean, he's essentially having an existential crisis, wasn't he? It's kind of like, I'm here because of the war, but doesn't mean I have to like war. I think he was really struggling with that. And I don't know. Obviously, we'll go back to the Bad Batch at some point, but I feel like in the Clone Wars, the emotional weight of a lot of the storylines, including that scene, hit harder than anything I saw in Bad Batch. Now, that was, I didn't stick past season 1, I don't think. I can't even remember if I made it to the end of that season. But
you got about 7 episodes in, I think.
Yeah, so I nothing I saw up until then hit as hard as that.
Season 1, But season 1 of Bad Batch
clone...
is not the best. But season 2 and 3 does delve a lot deeper into those kind of questions and the turn from clone trooper into stormtrooper. Sorry, Math.
You know the clone troopers that we meet Rex, Wolf, and is it one other?
It's Gregor, yeah. In Rebels, yeah.
Because is that explained in Bad Batch? Is that anything to do with Bad Batch, or are they just...
I will not spoil what happens in Bad Batch. I'll say Gregor, to my knowledge, doesn't pop up again. I think Wolf does, and Rex does pop up in Bad Batch. The only reason I say it is because I feel like there's a poster or something with him in it. In the trailer, he's in it. So it's like, it's not a secret that Rex pops up in Bad Batch, but don't expect... He's not a main character.
Explanation of where they kick... Yeah.
No,
right,
and the bridge... Bad Batch is only the first year or so, year to 2 years after Order 66. It's not... Right. So there's... And between there and Rebels is about another 10 years or so. So presently in the Star Wars canon, there is a massive gap between the end of Bad Batch, which again is about a year and a half, maybe 2 years after Order 66, which is 17 or 18 years before A New Hope. Rebels starts 4 or 5 years before A New Hope. So you've got a 12, 13 year period, and the content that we have in there at present is the Jedi games, Fallen Order and Survivor, the Solo movie, which obviously doesn't touch any of that stuff, and the Kenobi series. Outside of that, and not the first season of Andor, that's right at the tail end. Outside of that, we don't really have anything in the middle. There's the odd book that touches tiny bits. There's the odd comic touches tiny bits, but really you've got a decent decade where we don't know what happened to a lot of the characters between Clone Wars and Rebels or Bad Batch and Rebels. There's a big gap.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting kind of, as I say, that trying to kind of piece where it all was.
Yeah, which is understandable. The timeline, I'm quite good with timelines in this, so in my brain, visually, I can kind of see all the pieces like together, but that's because I've consumed it all. So I've got all the pieces. I know what's missing from the...
It's like that meme where all the different, equations are kind of popping up, and Mike's like, okay, there we go.
Pretty much. And I'm really interested by timelines, and anytime I read a new bit of Star Wars content, I always check where it fits in the timeline, just so I know what to expect, what not to expect, and what if so-and-so pops up at this point? What if they don't? And again, I've read like 65% of the novels that exist in the canon, so I'm about 2/3. So once I eventually get to the last few, which are not the heavy hitters, which is why I haven't really delved into them, I will have consumed pretty much all canon Star Wars content. So yay, cool badge for me. Megan's super proud of me. Definitely makes me more attractive to her. It doesn't in any way, shape or form. But Math, tell us. Order 66, we're here with Rex, with obviously Jesse as well. But really the Rex, as you said earlier, he's the view of point character. He's been in it since the Clone Wars movie. Him and Ahsoka side by side, they're the characters that we've seen, which were introduced for the Clone Wars. They're the ones we've had the perspective of. Did you think going into this, like, we would see Order 66? Like, what did you kind of think? I've never really asked you. What did you think these episodes were going to be?
I didn't really know. I feel bad because I kind of feel that Dave really wants to kind of say this bit, but I didn't know we were going to see this. And like I alluded to earlier, when I was watching this Saturday night, the bit when Rex drops his helmet to the floor, I paused and I was like, oh shit. And looking to see how long we're left of the episode, I'm thinking, right, they're going to show this. And this explains now, because I was thinking, where was Ahsoka when Order 66 happened? Because like we see in Revenge of the Sith lots of Jedi's getting taken down. And then realizing that Ahsoka is on a ship full of troopers, clone troopers. Shit. She's in trouble here. And I think what saves her is that relationship that she's got with Rex. And obviously, there's a thing nagging in the back of his head as well about with Fives. Just kind of, if that hadn't have happened, we would have lost Ahsoka. I mean, it also makes you question the fact that she never became a Jedi. She was only a Padawan. How come some of these really high top Jedi's didn't able to kind of survive, and that lots of them did get taken out. But
well, there is an answer. There is a legitimate, actual answer specifically about Anakin training Ahsoka. It's just by coincidence, apparently, in one of the Tales of episodes. That's all I'll say about that. Is there's three episodes about Ahsoka in the Tales of the Jedi, and they're at 3 different points in Ahsoka's life, and one of them is just about Anakin's very intense training regime. So,
because
I must admit, sorry to cut across you there, Matt, but I must admit I was thinking to myself when I was seeing the bit at the end there, and I was thinking back to that episode, and I was thinking, is that stuff in the Clone Wars, or did I see that somewhere else? But yeah, this does come back, doesn't it?
There's a whole episode all about Ahsoka being trained by Anakin in a way that's borderline abusive. I'd put it like that, but it does really explain how she, out of everyone, could have survived Order 66. Sorry, Dave, were you going to say something else there?
No, I was just going to say, it's interesting where the order really does matter that you watch it in. Because if you'd have watched that episode without having seen this episode, you'd probably be like, well, that was a waste of an episode, wasn't it? Because it was quite repetitive. It went on for quite a while.
The Tales of one, yeah.
Yeah, but remembering this episode, and actually, I think at the end you do, doesn't it have a flashback or something?
Very briefly, but I think you're right. It wouldn't have any weight to it if you hadn't seen this first.
No, it definitely matters to watch this one first. So yeah, no,
chronological is not always best.
No, I think it's probably worth watching that one, Maff. Like
we're gonna delve into it. We will delve into it. The discussion will be when we finish Revenge of the Sith. The discussion will be: do we want to just do the 2 Tales of things because they heavily connect to the Clone Wars, then delve into all the other movies and go back to Bad Batch, or not? I would probably say yes, just while it's all fresh in our mind. But we've got Revenge of the Sith before that. But sorry, Maff, back to yourself.
I did think before the actual orders, there's that bit when Ahsoka, she stood on the bridge and she starts hearing the kind of what's going on. And because I think just before that scene, we'd seen Maul kind of open his eyes and just kind of that little bit of it, the pillowbox of his face. I'm thinking, is Maul kind of sending the vision that he'd had to Ahsoka? That's what I first thought it were going to be. And Ahsoka's kind of, no, I'm not accepting this. Maul's trying to kind of trick me here. But then, as I say, the Order 66 and Rex drops his helmet, and it's like, it then twigs the fact, no, she's sensed. It's like, what's the line? 1,000 voices all scream out at once.
That's Obi-Wan in A New Hope when the Death Star blows up Alderaan. But in Revenge of the Sith, there's a very good scene with Yoda and Kashyyyk, and he feels Order 66 happen. And you see the montage, and you see Yoda like gripping his heart, and he like collapses, and he drops his cane, and he's like, "Oh God, what's happened?" And then then 2 clones behind him walk near him, and he jumps and beheads them immediately. And it's showing that a lot of Jedi who are more in tune with the Force could tell something's happening, something's going wrong. And I think also a little thing is often when Jedi sit in hyperspace, they often are prone to having Force visions. Some, when they meditate a lot more intensely. So I think being in hyperspace kind of very loosely canon, it like makes your Force sensitivity a little bit more intense, if you know what I mean.
I'm stretching a bit, but would that be because the Purgo are Force sensitive and the Purgo use kind of that's how they travel through space? Because they're doing that, if a Force users they're able to tap into the Force maybe a bit more.
One of the theories which is mentioned in, I think it gets mentioned a little bit in Rebels and Ahsoka, but I believe it also gets delved into a tiny bit more in the High Republic, is the legends say that the hyperspace lanes and routes were carved out by some Force beings. So it's like a one-off line or something that's similar to that. It's basically that the theory is that hyperspace did first happen because of Force-sensitive beings in some form. So I think you're on the right track there, Maff. I think it is definitely a bolster of the Force. It's a connection, definitely, hyperspace. The Purgo connection is definitely a right one. But yeah, the Order 66 stuff with her sensing it, I think it was just showing that her and Maul, it's really that duality, what we were talking about before. They are very evenly matched. And as Maul says to Ahsoka, he's like, I was raised by a Force religion. I got thrown away when I was no longer useful. You got raised but for your entire life. They were both raised from about the same age as children with one primary master teaching them the specific, the very dogmatic ways. They were indoctrinated into a very specific religion to do with Force powers, and then they were thrown away, and then they're both kind of in this state of flux where they're not the direct targets of this war that's going on. They're kind of in the fringe. And so I think it's just showing they're both sensing it. They're both equally matched. I want to talk a little bit about more in Order 66, but before we get there, is there anything else, Matt, you want to talk about just about that turn of Order 66?
That kind of struggle that Rex has, and when he says, about fives and that, and he's holding the guns out and he takes out them two troopers, you can see that kind of, it's like fighting against your programming to a certain degree, and that I think again that connection that he has with Ahsoka is the thing that's able to kind of get him through this and get him to kind of think, right, okay, we need to be able to work together. He's seen this before to a certain degree. Fives have kind of said this, and it's triggered something in him, and the fact that he's then able to kind of, I don't know. There's a film that I'm trying to think where there's someone kind of fighting against the programming to try and kind of keep going to be able to kind of let the other person get through, and that's what Vex is doing. And it's interesting as well. I think he just takes them troopers out to shoot them, but after that he then switches to stun.
The stun thing is an interesting part, which I do want to delve into in a moment. But I want to ask Dave, is there anything you want to mention about those elements or anything we have not yet quite touched upon?
No, I was actually trying to think. I don't know why, but I think back to the original Star Trek series where you were saying about trying to redo your programming, and I just remember him trying to fool someone by saying, "I always lie." They're like, but that can't be right, because if you were lying now, or you'd be telling the truth, or
Logic paradox. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it just made me think of that. But no, it was definitely, and again, that adds to the weight, doesn't it? It's not in the movie. It's just a switch, and then certainly in the cinema, I'm just thinking, well, of course, they're bloody stormtroopers, aren't they? I know they're clones, but they're stormtroopers. Of course, they're the baddies. So, yeah, I thought that added to the whole weight, and like you say, when he's saying to go off and find fives, it was just amazing.
Well, I want to ask you about Rex's tears. You see him cry twice in these episodes. I didn't know if you clocked them, Dave, at all, the two times that he did. The first one was when he was holding the guns to Ahsoka, and he's like shaking, as Maff pointed out, and he's like, get fives, get the file on fives, get the file on fives, and then he shoots. He's got one tear then. Did you see when he cried the other time?
No.
So it's when Ahsoka is talking to Rex, and it's with linking what Maff said, which is he says about his brothers being there, and he's like, do you not understand that all my brothers are here and they're willing to die, to fall on this ship to stop you getting off? And he's saying that, and she just walks up to him, takes his helmet off, and he's crying. And I just think, and she says to him, they may be willing to die on this ship to take me down, but I will not kill them. And I was just like, God damn, you're the best Jedi ever who's not a Jedi. Like that moment, the emotional resonance of Rex's tears in both those parts. Whenever I think of the finale of Clone Wars, whenever I think of core personality traits of Rex, I think of those two moments. And I didn't know if you, Dave, want to mention anything about them before I pass to Matt.
No, God, there's so much, isn't there? I mean, we could do a watch along, but stop it after every couple of minutes and just dissect that. Yeah, I mean, the idea that she's not a Jedi at this point. She's left, or not even. Well, she did leave of her own accord, but she was kind of hounded out as well. And yet she's showing here that she's the best of them, being absolutely selfless. And so, yeah, and just going in, she knows she knows what's happening as well now. She knows that she's dicing with death as she walks into this. So, yeah, just heart-wrenching.
Completely. Back to you, Matt.
I also, she then goes and she kind of, after, because she goes off to find out what happened, get the file on fives, doesn't she? Because there's a big shootout thing. She disappears up into the vents.
So there's the first point of Rex's tears. He says to find fives. She stands on that plinth thing, blocking all of the blasters, and while she's doing it, slicing the ceiling. She gets out, finds the droids and makes friends with quite a few little droids, one of which sounds just like Chopper in a very cute way. Yeah, exactly. And then she goes in the data file, she finds out, and she sees Rex's report, which I love, where he literally goes, something's wrong here. And it just gets locked away and pushed aside, but he's like, something isn't right here. Fives is right. There's some other purpose for us. I don't know what it is, but which I really like that callback again. Fives, my boy. I love fives. And then when she finds out, that's when she gets Rex into the area, gets the chip out of his head, and then goes from there. So yeah, from that point, she knows. And then after that, she has that conversation with Rex. And I think that's why she says, I won't kill them, because it's not just they've turned, it's a biological thing they can't control.
Well, there's a little thing just before that as well, when she goes and rescues Maul. And that interaction they have in
I'm glad you're mentioning this. I've got a note on this, please.
The thing that I love is he asks for something to give him a bit of a fighting chance. And she turned around and says, I'm not rooting for you. And I just thought, yeah. And, he's just chaos. At which point, I just jump forward a little bit. This is the thing I think Dave will probably love. I feel Maul channels his inner Magneto of just pulling things together, smashing things out. And the fact that he's ripping through the ship so easily with no weapons as such is quite scary. And when she does kind of speak to Rex again, it's like, hey, Maul's escaped, we're done. And she's like, yeah, I let him go. And he's like, what? but it's a means to an end, and it's a clever thing of like, well, okay, I need to get off at you. So I suppose, enemy of my enemy kind of thing, but that interaction between where she kind of accepts what Maul has said to a certain degree. Okay, right, this is in place now. We have to deal with this. But like, I'm letting you go, so giving you a chance, but I'm not rooting for you. You're on your own. Off you go, kind of thing. It would I just love that interaction and that. But yeah, then she then goes on. I can't think how she gets Rex now, because she ends up getting him onto the medical table with the droids.
Yeah, she did that. We don't need to delve into Rex having the chip out again part. The timeline isn't overtly important. The main next two bits we really need to delve into is what you've just touched upon, which is we've got Maul obliterating the clones. We've then got Ahsoka fighting the huge amount of clones. And then we've got the final scene. Now, Matt, I will let you give your first thoughts on the final scene when we get there. But first, I'll give the baton back to Dave. So of the two things I just mentioned, Dave, what would you rather have first talks on? Maul really getting through everyone, or Ahsoka and Rex against the clones? What would you rather talk about first? Because they both basically happen at the same time.
I mean, just because you mentioned it last, but the Ahsoka, just amazing action. I mean, we've said all the way through this season 7, not so much the last 4 episodes, but just the action is on a different level from all the rest of the Clone Wars seasons. And again, you do sort of feel a little bit of a peril, even though Well, at this time when it was released, did we have Rebels?
Yeah,
I know I
Rebels-
watched Rebels.
Yeah,
before.
Rebels finished. Then before they made the next animated series, which was Bad Batch, they made this.
Yeah, but to me, even though you know Ahsoka's still going to be around, it still feels like it has
Danger.
threat and danger. Yeah, because it's also that she knows she doesn't want to kill these people because they're not acting themselves. Something's obviously happened. So if she ends up being put in a position where she has to kill someone, it seems like you're always on the edge where something quite monumental could happen. But yeah, I just feel like the whole action again, as with the whole of Series 7, the camera work, how it sort of moves around, it's not just static. You're watching sprites slog away each other. I just think it was, again, top tier stuff. And I think this is another one, though. So we've got to the end and we're saying to Matt, like, no, hold off. But I feel like Tales of the Jedi episode is worth watching because watching that makes this episode and this scene better.
Yeah. But I wouldn't have been able to show him that because some people are diehards.
Spoil this.
Yeah. Some people on some of the Facebook groups I'm in, they go, oh, I want to watch everything in chronological order. So they watch like, there's where Bad Batch starts, the series, overlaps somewhat with the Clone Wars. Okay. I won't say anything else about it, but there's an overlap. So some people, what they do, and I don't agree with people doing this, is they watch the episodes of Clone Wars in chronological order, which is a bit of a pain because as we went through in this whole watch along, parts of season 3 is at like the start and then it flits back and forth. Too much of a ball ache. But some people, when they get around here, they'll the Tales of the Jedi stuff, because 3 episodes focus on Ahsoka and 3 episodes focus on Dooku. The Dooku stuff obviously has to happen before Dooku dies. So what they're doing is watching like this episode of Clone Wars, this episode of Clone Wars, then this one episode about Dooku, then this episode of Clone Wars, this episode of Clone Wars, this episode of Ahsoka, and if you watch the Ahsoka episode that Dave and I are alluding to, when it is chronologically speaking, it's before Ahsoka leaves the Jedi Order. So you would get an episode which very, if not overtly, very, very, very heavily shows you at some point Ahsoka is going to have to really fight against some clones for a reason. And if you found that out in series like 4 or 5 before the Temple bombing arc, it would take away so much from this episode. Because I wanted Maff to go in blind. But we will watch Tales of the Jedi and stuff. I think we'll watch Revenge of the Sith, then we'll maybe do the wrap-up episode of Clone Wars, then we'll watch Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire, and then we'll watch the rest of the films, because a lot of Empire and Jedi do link with this quite a lot. But I also want to bounce off what you said, Dave, which is the camera work. And what I really like is because there's no live action people and having to get stunt doubles in, I find that because you don't need to cut. They cut when it's right to cut, when it makes sense, and when it's the best time to cut. They don't cut because they need to swap someone out. So I find the whole geography of all the action scenes, especially in the ship, is very confined. If you did it with real people, I think at points you'd almost be a little bit lost, especially where Ahsoka is in comparison to all the clones. But at no point was I ever lost with where Ahsoka or the clones were. So I want to give it now to Maff to say anything you thought about this Ahsoka sort of chunk. Then we'll talk about Maul a bit, and then we'll get to the finale.
A couple of things. I mean, it flows really well. Mm-hmm. First, can you read my notes? Because there's certain things that you're picking up that I've got. It's funny you mentioned the order to watch it. My little one was asking about, because obviously, I'm kind of getting things ready and, I've been watching clips and what have you. He's like, he asked me who Darth Vader was. And I went, I can't tell you. And like Alex is like, well, why not? I says, because at some point we will watch it. And if I tell him who he is, it's going to spoil it for later on. And that. So it's interesting. It's all right watching certain things in order, but then, you then spoil things. To a certain degree, I think you need to watch the originals to have that moment with I am your father. Because if you know that beforehand, it kind of spoils certain things. It doesn't hit the same way.
Counter, and this is what I always argue, then seeing the original trilogy, you already know all the Jedi are gone, which spoils Order 66 and spoils Anakin's turn. And I would argue Anakin's turn and the Order 66 stuff and the Mustafar battle, all of that, especially when Anakin gets his arms and stuff sliced off, if you go into that knowing nothing about Star Wars, which is basically impossible because Toy Story 2 spoils it, like, if you go into Star Wars and you genuinely know nothing, I think, especially with a young kid, the prequels would hit harder than the original, just because also the original has been parodied so many times that I don't know if people, I don't know. I think because Star Wars is such a cultural thing, I don't even know if it's possible to actually get away with a twist in either of those trilogies. Sequels, definitely, because they've not been referenced.
I think it's awkward because it's like I've done quite well to avoid a lot of the spoilers that are in here. But because of the internet, you could quite easily find so many spoilers out there.
Well,
Plus, it's cultural, you know.
100%.
But going back to this, the bit when she's got Rex and she's trying to find the chip in his brain, they've got the medical droid. That bit when she puts her hand on his head and says, "I've got it. I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me. I'm one with the Force, and the Force is with me." And I'm thinking, that's later actually in chronological order because it's Rogue One. Now,
do you mean just say the character name just to remind you both?
Yeah, because I know who plays it, but I don't know.
It's Chirrut Imwe, played by Donnie Yen.
Donnie Yen. It's. I mean, I don't know if that's a mantra that's been. Is that taken from here?
No, it started in Rogue One, and then so out of universe, it was first in Rogue One. Since it was in Rogue One, it's all across. It's in the High Republic, so it is a Force mantra. But Chirrut Imwe is part of the Guardians of the Wills, who are a sect of Force sensitives who aren't the Jedi. They respect the Jedi. They work with the Jedi a lot. In the High Republic, there's a whole arc all about it, but they are not Jedi. So I'm one with the Force with me. It's just it's an equivalent of a Force sensitive or even someone who's not overtly Force sensitive wanting to connect with the cosmic Force. But it's definitely a reference to that 100%.
Yeah, it was nice, that point of like she needed to channel to find this chip she needed because she realised that, you know, there's nothing there. You know, you were not picking anything up and being able to then find it, and then obviously they do take it out. But it was just that nice point of all the chaos that's going around, and it's like, okay, stop, let's center, let's find this, and let's deal with this. And I just thought it was a nice moment that them two kind of had there, where all right, he's just laid there, to be fair. But, you know,
he does speak back. He does say it as well, so there is a degree of a moment, I think.
Does he repeat it to her?
Yes, when she says it like 4 times, and he says it the last 2 very quietly.
But yeah, I just love that moment that they had there, and again, it's that relationship that these guys have had all the way. You know, no offense, if this had been Cody, it wouldn't have been the same.
No, not at all.
Because we have seen Rex pretty much all the way. You know, I mean, Cody is in a lot of the episodes, but Cody doesn't probably mean as much as what 5 does to you.
No, also Cody doesn't even hesitate to shoot Obi-Wan because he does in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah. Sorry, Megan.
Well, yeah, she doesn't like him because of that. But let's delve into it more a bit, and then we'll do the sort of final parts, and then anything else that we haven't mentioned we can touch upon. I know Maff's looking at his notes, so I'm sure there is more. But Maul, when I think of the Order 66 montage, obviously I think of certain stuff with Ahsoka and Rex, but I just think another reason why Maul is one of my favourite characters is when he's walking through those hallways, as Maff touched upon earlier, and he's just taking names. And you realise when the Shadow Collective, like when the Pikes in the prior episode that wasn't very good, the arc rather, when the Pikes are like, do you want to be the one to tell Maul? You don't want to do... And we saw it a little bit in season 5, I think, when he takes over Black Sun and etc. And you go, Maul literally can take out anyone. And it's not even like you have a fighting chance. You literally cannot even beat Maul when he's not even armed. So I want to ask you, Dave, did you remember that stuff about Maul, and has this changed or reinforced anything you thought about Maul? Because I don't really know your opinions on Maul that much.
So I think Maul is, I mean, you have to remember 1999 when the Phantom Menace came out, and like I say, the overall movie mixed sort of feelings about it. But 100% Maul was the best thing about that movie. And I remember there was a lot of debate at the time because the only Jedis we'd sort of seen were Vader and Kenobi, and it was basically half a machine and an old bloke, basically doing some it's more like kendo. And then you got this little Ray Park dude flipping about with this dual lightsaber thing going on. It's like, holy shit. And so there had to be an explanation for why that was. This was basically a guy in his prime, and I know he's only got half the body that he had, but I always think of Maul as being like the peak combat soldier, or
Duelist.
martial artist and duelist, yeah. But he's so fucking angry. He's always after revenge, so that is his Achilles heel, which stops him from being even better. But it's nice to see him with just the reins off, and where he's not bogged down with Kenobi or anything like that. So I think, yeah, he's an absolute badass.
His calm focus, and you just think when he has time to think, and as you say, his emotions aren't getting his way, he doesn't even struggle. He never gets hit by anything. He just walks through the corridors, and the clones are just a minor hurdle for him. I love those scenes. I think they're absolutely incredible. Matt, anything you want to mention about Maul before we get onto the big boy finale?
He kind of leads into the big boy finale, to be fair.
Because he steals the ship, which is another part where you think, oh, Ahsoka's going to escape, because I know Ahsoka Rex is going to get out of this. And then that happens. How did you feel, Maff? What do you think was going to happen?
Well, the thing is, when he's kind of going through and he's like, well, before that, he just makes his way to the hyperdrive.
Oh, yeah, and he just tears it down.
It's again, I've mentioned before that, this will lead on to us, when Starkiller kind of pulls the destroyer down, that's a little bit far-fetched, but fair enough. We see Ahsoka do this later on. But when Maul gets in there and there's a hyperdrive and it's just like, and he just yanks on it and you think, shit. Again, the power this guy has of like, okay, well, I'm going to destroy this and I'm going to just take my leave and just leave you sitting ducks in the air. You just think, this guy's a badass, like Dave says. And again, if he was channeled in the right way, and maybe he could have had the right, a better master and not been an evil bastard, like, which I suppose Maul, he's always angry, and if they could have just found a way to channel that in a better way for him, he could have been something completely different. But
therapist Maff here. Well, you should read. You should read some of the Darth Maul comics. I say, while we're taking a little bit, not quite a break, but as we're easing off the pedal just a bit as we go through this year of more Star Warsy stuff. We won't be such urgency to watch the next thing. I would recommend reading those Maul comics I recommended in the Son of Dathomir episode, which is a 4 or 5 part mini-series of Darth Maul, followed by a one-off issue, Age of Republic Darth Maul. Those 6 go together so well of understanding why is Maul so angry? Why does he hate the Jedi so much when he doesn't really seem to have any connection to them prior to Phantom Menace? That all gets explained of the torturous training that Palpatine puts him through. And I think it works really well. But also in one of the Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy, Maul's in that. But he's a goodie, and it's just hilarious. I just want to say it's one of my favourite bits of that little special. But yeah, we're getting into it. So with Maul, he destroys the hyperdrive, and we get to see a ship. This hyperdrive gets destroyed during hyperdrive, which I don't think in the canon we've seen. I think I've heard about it in a couple of books, but I've never seen a ship this hyperdrive gets destroyed while it's in hyperdrive, and it starts to fall apart as it comes out. I thought that was really cool. The animation looked great in that. And then obviously Maul steals the ship. And then we get the Ahsoka moment, which I think is mirrored a bit in the Kenobi series with Vader, which is trying to hold back the ship. Sorry, Matt.
I suppose, pulling it out of hyperdrive the way it doesn't quite work like it does in the movies, but it's like just putting the handbrake on the car all of a sudden. Now, fair enough, handbrakes don't quite work the way that they do in the movies where they can start spinning around, but you are suddenly just emergency braking that the ship is going to take an impact from that and start kind of, there's going to be repercussions from that. But yeah, the plan of Ahsoka and Rex, like, right, we'll do what we can. We're going to steal the ship, and like Maul's like, I'm going to beat you to it.
And Ahsoka holding that ship back, like even watching it this time, I was like, as linking with what Dave said, it's so intense, and it really shows how powerful she's become, and the power to hold back the ship. And she's like being dragged along, and Rex is getting shot at, and she makes the Jedi decision. Instead of trying to kill Maul and stop him, she chooses to make sure that Rex is safe. And again, it speaks volumes, really. I really like that part. So I do want to quickly just come back to Dave, which is with that part of Ahsoka holding the ship back and then this ship eventually crashing. Did you remember that? Because it was a little bit patchy in my memory, completely honest. I remember the end with in Maff's background.
Yes.
Did you remember those parts?
No, and like you say, you think back to the game, don't you? And also, yeah, the Kenobi series. But yeah, no, like I say, even talking about it tonight, I must admit, I'm thinking there's just so much. I mean, so much packed. There's again, it makes no sense when I think back to the last 4 episodes that we bloody wasted. I can't think of I mean, Matt gave him a little bit of a redemption before, but we spent so much time. I just don't know why that was. Save a bit of money maybe to spend it all on these episodes. But yeah, I've forgotten probably 80% of these episodes already. But just again, I'm left with that feeling of just wow. And I'm sure we'll get right into the emotional resonance of the end and everything. It's almost can be a weird parallel, but if you ever watch the very last episode of Blackadder, like the end of Blackadder goes forth, a little bit like that, where all the music just slowed right down and very minimalist and just really pulls on the heartstrings. And it was like that for this end scene as well. But like I say, I could go back and watch these 4 episodes again and pick up on other little bits in there.
It's absolutely, it's incredible. It's so packed, and it's again these episodes. Episode 9 has got 9.7 on IMDb. Episode 10 and 11 have got 9.8, and Victory and Death, the finale, has 9.9. You do not get that. Breaking Bad's top episodes do not reach that. Game of Thrones don't. It's perfect. Like there is so much to unpack here. I feel like this episode, the amount of time we spent talking about these, we could almost, if we just split this, you guys would have murdered me if I suggested this, but if we did episodes 9 and 10 in one podcast and then episodes 11 and 12 in a podcast, I think we would have easily been able to talk about them for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
But I would not have done that to you. That would have been very mean. But Maff, so we'll start to wrap up because we have been chatting for a long time, but we'll get into the falling of the ship and the final scenes, and then if there's anything else we haven't touched upon, we can just add it as an addendum at the end.
Just before that, there's a bit where it's like they try and bluff and say, "Well, Ahsoka's not a Jedi," and like they try
the
kind
conversation
of play
with
that.
Jesse,
It's like we can kind of get around this because Ahsoka's not a Jedi, but then makes me question. I wonder what actually was in the orders of Order 66.
Well, I think Palpatine knew because of Ahsoka coming back. He knew that she was in the fold again. He obviously knew that there was a group of clones going off to fight in the Siege of Mandalore. He would have known about that. So again, and also Rex did specifically say when Order 66 happened, he said, we need to go after Ahsoka Tano, special orders from Palpatine to go after. So I think it is like an addendum to Order 66. But also the thing is when Rex was under the influence, he said to eject all the escape pods, which is why all of this happened. And that's such a brutal thing, again, for him to have done under that influence.
Yeah, it was just... I did question. I wondered how they'd spun that because, technically she's not a Jedi.
Just a direct order from Palps, I'd say. But how did you feel about the specific end, the crashing of the ship, the end scene, because you'd not seen this before? Tell us that specific part. How did you feel?
That bit, it's weird because the the bit here that's in my background, that when they crashed the ship, she kind of stood out and they put all the helmets on pikes. My first thought, that's in Mandalorian, isn't it? One of the, or it's there's another scene where the Mandalorians have stuck stormtrooper helmets on pikes.
That's in the Mandoverse on Tatooine.
Right.
It's
okay.
that's post Return of the Jedi. That's when the Empire's fallen, the Battle of Jakku's happened, and the Imperial Remnant are about. And it's near Peli Motto, the woman played by Amy Sedaris with the big hair who loves Grogu. In the areas there, when there's Book of Boba Fett with the pikes and other stuff, we see Stormtrooper helmets on spikes. But that's quite, a warning. That's to say Empire are not welcome. This is more of a...
But this is more of a kind of a respect kind of thing. And then she's in a grey kind of robes, which we see in Ahsoka.
And we see at the end of Rebels. That's what she was wearing at the end of Rebels.
Yeah. And then she leaves the lightsaber just on the floor. And as if to say, well, that's kind of the end of this chapter now. I can't, And I think that also means the fact that I think she's accepted the fact that Anakin has fallen, and that were kind of the last. Anakin gave her these lightsabers, and he altered them. He'd made it blue instead of it being the green that it was before. And it's like, I'm leaving this behind now because I can't have that part of me anymore.
Well, at this point, she still hasn't accepted Anakin turned. Because in Rebels, she hasn't accepted it. Her whole arc in Rebels, from like halfway through season 2. She goes off on her own little quest to work out what on earth's going on, and then she senses Vader and Anakin, still doesn't accept it, and only when she fights him 1-to-1 does she actually really accept it.
Yeah.
So I think it's her putting the Jedi behind her, not Anakin specifically.
Fair enough.
And I think it's meant to be showing, because she already lost the other lightsaber when fighting off the clones. I think it's also part of it is meant to be like, the assumption is Ahsoka died. That's what she's kind of meant to convey, is that she's dead. There's no... That's why her lightsaber's just left there. The question I have, unfortunately, which does... Tiny little thing, is if the insinuation is that everyone died in that ship crash, then who would have buried the clones?
Well, there could have been some clones that had...
Because in theory, Rex... Well, it was meant to be that they all died, and there was meant to be a grave, which was meant to be Ahsoka's and Rex's. I believe... Right. So it's like... They technically were kind of fake their own death, but also it's like, well, if you did that, why did you bury all the clones? Because none of the clones survived. I feel like I read somewhere it was something like Rex left a piece of his armor behind or something to insinuate that he died, and he took someone else's armor to insinuate one last clone was the one clone left, and they're the ones that buried everyone. But again, that's a very tiny niggle for something that's such a beautiful scene to look at, the shot, the music's incredible, but that impact, I mean, there's the whole bit where she flies out the ship, and it's quite video gamey, where she's like shooting around, which I thought was cool, but the real resonance is that last scene, which is her on the ground with Rex.
Yeah, I just think it's nice the fact that you kind of have that scene and you kind of pan away, and then you come back and it's snowed, and that planet, do we know what that is?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I know that the scene with Vader happened about 2 years or so after Order 66. Right,
because you kind of come in and you've got the snow troopers kind of there, then Vader kind of walks up and picks up the light. In the sky, is that Mori flying around?
Morai, yeah, it's not overtly confirmed, but it's definitely a convor that's the same species as Morai, so I think it is very, very heavily insinuating that's Morai, the spirit guide thing of the sister from the Mortis arc.
Because she gave herself up so Ahsoka could live.
Yeah.
So then it felt like a thing to kind of Vader to say, well, she's still around here because, but I just, it felt like they tied it up with a nice little bow the way it kind of finished. I was worried watching this and not knowing how it was going to end. It's like, how do you actually finalize this and make you feel like this is the end of the series now, and you can walk away and think, right, okay, now I know there's more stuff still to watch, but I feel you've kind of tied this story up and I'm happy where it's finished.
Much better than the finale of Yoda. Like, again, that's the finale I got, is the Yoda Force Vision thing, which was cool, but it wasn't a proper finale. It just stopped. But it is getting quite late. So, Dave, what were your thoughts on these final scenes and stuff? And then we'll do the final wrap-ups.
It just left you with a real sense of sorrow. Again, I think absolutely perfect ending for the Clone Wars. Like I say, I was kind of lucky as well, like Math, where I got to gorge them all at the same time, so I didn't have to wait. I didn't have this big break between season 6 and season 7. But also the creators obviously had that time to think, how we're not going to get another chance at this. How do we actually finish this off? So, yeah, I just think the mirror of what's going on with Ahsoka and what's going on with Anakin slash Darth Vader, obviously, as he is at this point. But again, you feel an empathy with him because we've followed Anakin all the way through the Clone Wars. And so even though we know he's basically Darth Vader at this point, it feels like more of a tragedy as opposed to the movies, which made you feel like it was just more of an inevitability. So yeah, but beautiful way to finish it. Sort of sad it's over, but yeah, kind of glad we got there in the end.
Yeah. Is there anything else, Math? Obviously, again, we are going to come back. We're going to do an overview of all of the Clone Wars. So we will, if there's anything else we've missed, if you guys want to rewatch these episodes, mention anything you missed in them. I've got a few ideas of what I'll bring up in the final wrap-up episode of the Clone Wars after we've watched Revenge of the Sith. But final words, my friends, because we've been recording for a long time and I really need a wee. Is there anything else, Math? Kind of final thoughts of anything else in this episode?
I think Dave's right with what it's. I'm glad we've got to the end of it to kind of see what the story is, and yeah, it's going to make the movies a lot better. But it's also it fits really well how it ends. But I do feel sad that it has ended, and that. But I'm content with what we've got. I'm not left feeling. Why couldn't you told us this? Or why could it? Sometimes you finish your series and you're like thinking that's fine, but there's still a lot of questions there. There's still questions that I probably do have, but I don't feel that I'm sat there going, yeah, but you didn't explain this, that, and the other. I'm happy with what I've got. I've loved it. I've loved the way we've done this, as opposed to when we were like season 1, an episode. The fact that you split it up and you've made it so that it's easier to digest, and there's so much we can. There's no way we could have done season 7 as one episode because there's just, we've struggled to kind of keep it down to the time that we have done just for these 4 episodes. But yeah, it's uplifted everything else that I've been watching, and I say I'm sure when I sit and watch Revenge of the Sith, that's going to hit a lot better as well.
It is. And you can always come back and revisit Clone Wars. Again, we'll do that episode, the wrap up. But now that you've seen it all, you can just go back and cherry pick the best episodes. You can watch the Pong Krell one. You can watch, and I would encourage you to do so because we won't do the wrap up episode for another month or two. Just so, the listeners can actually catch up with us because they're not going to hear this for a little while. But yeah, go back, watch some of the best episodes, start thinking of your lists of the best and worst episodes, best favourite moments, worst moments, etc. This is obviously... we'll see. Well, it's with this, this is definitely the best, and when we do the wrap-up, I'll just say a blanket. We know this is the best. Outside of this, what's your favourite? But Dave, final words, and then I'll say those magic words and wrap up. Anything else you want to say we haven't already?
No, I just really... Now, I think I'm going to go back and watch that Tales of the Jedi episode, actually. Even though I know what it is all the way through the episode, it just feels like I need to go watch it. I'm going to spend the next few weeks figuring out what my favorite ones. I think it might still be the same as what it was after the first watch. But no, just amazing. I think it's been great. It's been a slightly longer journey. When we set off, we weren't really sure. We hadn't figured it out, but hats off to you, Mike, for the way you've chopped up and selected the episodes for us. And it's really made me sort of enjoy the episodes more than like when you're just binging through it and you don't stop to actually listen, not listen, but stop to absorb it, digest it. It's been great to stop, have a chat about it. Glad I have been so waiting to watch Revenge of the Sith for so long. And I'm just glad we can finally get going with it.
Yeah, you got the whole week. You can watch whenever you want. And it was if Ahsoka hadn't been coming out when it had, I would have broken Rebels up a bit more. But I was very conscious of the time limit we had, and I'm very glad because I think we finished Rebels within like weeks of Ahsoka starting. So but yeah, people must stay tuned wherever you're listening to this, hopefully on the Star Wars Chit-Chat podcast feeds and the Star Wars Chit-Chat YouTube channel. Details will be in the description. You may already be there listening. Who knows? We've got more content to come, friends. Don't fret. We've got all the movies to go through. Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire, and we're going to do the Bad Batch as well. There's 3 seasons of that, 16 episodes. So I think we're going to be breaking those up as well, which will take probably another year. So we've got content until the end of next year. And that doesn't even include them. There's more books, there's more comics, and other animated series are going to be popping up. And if we get really desperate, maybe we'll watch Star Wars Resistance, but let's hope not, because that is a slog. But, it's been an absolute joy. I'm so thankful, Dave and Maff, both of you, for coming on this journey, a 1.5 year long journey, going through all of these episodes and really taking the time, writing notes and really giving some detailed opinions. We haven't agreed on absolutely everything, which is part of the beauty of this. And that will all culminate in the final wrap-up episode that we will do after we watch.
Can I just say,
yeah,
I do think that maybe because I'm watching and making notes about there's certain things that I do notice more than just sitting there and just watching it. Because, the amount of times you'll watch films sometimes and kind of scrolling on your phone, you're not paying for it. Whereas these I've really paid attention. Even when I've wanted to watch my phone instead of watching certain things, because I've got my notepad next to me and I'm pausing, rewinding, making little notes. It's made me appreciate and kind of spot more things than what I probably would have done. So, again, thank you for putting us on this journey.
No worries. And you can rewatch. You can watch this. And I would, again, Rebels. You can just pick and choose now. You can just choose and you go, I fancy the droids episode of it. And you can just go watch that because that's what we all want. Those 4 episodes of all of the Clone Wars we've watched, of all the greatness we've seen, like this finale. Is anything going to top the droids ones? That question will be saved for when we do the wrap-up episodes. But we'll be doing Revenge of the Sith first to release this build-up of tension of wanting to watch the finale, and then we'll get there. But friends, thank you for everyone to listening and supporting on this journey. Subscribe, like, share, all that amazing stuff. Send us your comments and things. I'll try and get some posts up on social media, see if we can get some comments in the Clone Wars wrap-up episode. But yes, we'll do Revenge of the Sith before that, so there'll be plenty of warning. But friends, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we appreciate each and every one of you tuning in for this entire Clone Wars Conversations journey. And as always, may the Force be with you.
No. Sorry, I couldn't resist.